All right, you guys ready to have a fun show today?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
This topic that we're going to be talking about today has come up a lot where, I don't know, we grow up in this mentality of we're going to grow our assets from the very beginning, from the first day you start investing, whenever that is. For some people, it's like super early in their teens, and other people, it's like in their 40s, right? And we're just going to grow and we're going to attack the highest growth Amazon stocks we can find, right? And at some point in the future, when we're ready on the threshold of retirement, we're going to convert to income.
Be aggressive early,
Yes.
right? You have tons of time. Go be aggressive, grow your money. It'll work out. And then you shift to something safer.
Correct.
To put your money in for retirement.
And so we've talked to, I don't know how many different people over the years about this methodology, and nobody's ever challenged it. I didn't really challenge it until a little while ago. But it's always just this belief that this works, that as long as you grow your assets from the very beginning and you have whatever rate of return on them, that when you hit retirement, you can convert to income, and that's the best methodology.
It's not only belief, it's entrenched.
Yes.
Yeah.
From a long time ago, right? It's your money demon. It's entrenched. That's what's going to happen.
Money demon?
Money demon. Yeah.
So you're calling this thought process a demon?
The demon that you've been taught that you can't let loose of. Yes.
But why? Okay, first of all, why would we think anything different?
I mean, everything, all the marketing is around it as well. I remember, I forget the bank. Their colors were orange, but it was like, what's your number? And
ING.
ING.
Yes.
And the number that they were talking about was like the nest egg number. So
Everybody's walking around with the like
yes.
9.3, the 6.1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
if you're watching CNBC, you get this, are you a growth investor or are you a value investor? And they almost make it sound like, well, in times of growth, don't be in value. It's almost like they make it boring.
And they make
I'm
it
young, I got to be in growth.
and they make it black and white. It's one or the other. There's no such thing as this middle ground or even.
Well, sometimes they talk about the balanced investor, but I guess where I'm coming from is, why hasn't there been a huge movement to buck the thought process? That this is how it works, because this is entrenched. I love that word. There's just this underlying, this is how it is. This is what everybody does. When you're young, you grow. And when you're older, on retirement threshold or a retirement, you have value or you have income producing investments.
You hope you've grown it enough.
I don't think there would be a movement to challenge that, because you're like, well, what other thinking is there? Why would I need to think any different? Right?
Right. Because that's what my parents or, everyone and that's even what the traditional financial advisor, that's their strategy. We're going to help you grow your money while you're working.
And the funny part about that is growth, growth, growth. But who's the best known advisor out there?
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett. What does he do?
He doesn't.
But nobody pays attention to this. Everybody knows him, right? That's what drives me crazy.
What's his, one of his, he has so many great sayings. Yeah. But one of the sayings that I love, and I'm not going to ask you to figure it out, is the stock market is a transition from the impatient to the patient. He says, go buy quality and just wait. Just sit there. Because if you buy quality investments, it's inevitable that they're going to grow. And when he defines quality as profitable, low debt, like there's a belief system of what Warren Buffett understands when he talks about quality, because quality might mean different things to different people.
Right.
But when it comes to his belief, there's money behind that. So profitable, cash flow, low debt, so, and there's more to it. We're not going to dig into that quote today, but the reality is he just says, be patient. He's not saying go find the best growth companies you can. He didn't even talk about growth. No. He talks about quality. And there's such a good, and what's the book that changed his investment career? The Intelligent Investor.
Benjamin Graham.
Yeah. So if you dig into that book and you, which is, no offense,
It's big and boring.
it is so boring. It is so boring. I've read it like twice and I'm like, yeah.
Maybe that's why there's only one Warren Buffett, because he's the only one who actually
He's like,
reads
this is the greatest book ever. And I'm like, man, the first chapter was like horror. It was like
It's the only one
heart
that can
surgery.
stay awake.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, if you look into it, he'll say the only part you need to read in that book is this
like,
part.
he just gives you the
That
one
gives you everything you need.
Which it talks about understanding
Being
what
patient.
quality is.
Yeah.
And what is a good investment versus a bad investment. Okay. So this thought process, we're going to talk about what could go wrong here. If you're focused solely for the lion's share of your investment career on growth, and then you're going to convert to income, what's probably the biggest issue or what are some issues that you can run into that can blow up this?
Well, it's the reality that there is volatility in the market. So you can do everything right for, call it 30 years. But if on that 31st year, that's your year to convert to income, or that's your time to withdraw, it can blow up everything that you've been working for.
So timing.
Yeah.
Or along the way, you have an '08 or an '01 and you make decisions that you didn't expect you're going to make because you get scared. The fear and greed kicks in and you never thought you'd sell it. And you're not supposed to sell low, but it happens all the time. You wait. I'm just going to wait, hold on a little bit longer and a little bit longer. And then you hit it at the very bottom. I do know people that did that. I've fallen into that trap when I was in not 2001. So, and it can blow up your whole plan.
Yeah.
So it goes against conventional wisdom. Better, but yet we're human.
Well, the growth thing is always the S&P 500 typically, right? You get there. So if you go back to 2001 and 2, and you had that mentality, it wiped out 45%, you had $1 million, wiped out 45%. Now you're down to 550, and you're planning on drawing 5% off that million. Now you're drawing a 50,000 out. You're not going to recover. You can't. So that mentality has been entrenched and taught, but it just doesn't work in
Well,
real
the crazy
situations.
thing to me, like sitting here listening to everybody talk, is if this is so tried and true and it's the underlying core belief that this is what everybody does, why do we need people like us? Like financial advisors? Like if this was so good, why in the world would everybody be like worried about retirement? Like if growing your investments, getting to retirement, and then retiring worked every time, we'd be out of business. Like nobody's challenging this. It doesn't work.
Right.
Because of what you said, I think greed corrupts everything. If you look at the Dalbar study, I wish I would have thought about bringing that up on the show and showing everybody. It's over a 30-year history of what investors actually get to keep from investing in mutual funds and in the market. Okay. And it's horrible to look at it. It's like over a 30-year period, the average investor, okay, so this is of all the investors out there, of all the research that they've done, the average investor over a 30-year period has made 1.66%, somewhere around there, because they're constantly moving and they're not sticking it out. They're not being patient in good investments. They're just, I don't like what I'm doing. I don't like this advisor anymore. I don't like this fund. There's been changes and, it's lost me money. I'm out. Yeah. And then you go to this one.
Average hold was.
Try to time the market, which, all that.
I don't know. That would be interesting.
Because they have the stats of, obviously they're moving their money around. I wonder what the longest or just the average hold of any particular mutual fund was.
I don't know. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, we have to fight against our own impulses to make bad decisions when it matters the most.
And that's probably ultimately why people hire an advisor, right? Is to help them protect them from themselves.
Be a coach, get you through those times.
That's right. Yeah. I need somebody to talk to whenever I'm ready to sell everything out.
But when it gets really tough, that's when I feel like clients are like, he clearly isn't doing his job, because they don't see us as a coach. They see us as somebody who makes them money. Or when things are going really good and they're like, I'm making, 15% with you, but my friends are making 20. I'm going to fire you because I want 20.
Yeah.
So even when it matters and when it doesn't as much, I think our innate sin nature, whatever you want to, is just driven towards greed.
Well, it's more.
More
is more.
Yeah.
And I want more.
And it gets us into a bad place. And I think that's why most investors don't make what the market does. Because if the market's averaging 10% a year, literally, if you just buy and hold, it's 10% a year. And yet the average investor is making far less than that. What's actually happening?
They're not buying and holding.
No.
Emotions.
Right.
Emotions are raw, and then the white noise off the CNBC and Fox Business or whatever drive you crazy.
Because if they're trying to time it so you miss, what is it, the statistic, that the amount of return that's come from just a handful of the best days in the market, and you're going to miss those if you're trying to time it.
You mean if you're not in the market?
If you're not in the market, on just a handful of days over the last 30 years, and it's like 5 days, and one of them was April 10th. Right? We had this huge gain. This year.
So we got into a discussion. I've thought about this for the lion's share of my career. And then this year I was like, we're gonna just poke a pin in that balloon and see what happens, right? So we did some research and we were looking around to find, what would be the best growth model that we can compare against. And then instead of this mentality that we all believe, and I'm no different, like I believe this for a lot of years in my career, that we're going to grow our assets and convert to income. That's the one mentality. What if we just started building income at a young age? And instead of saying, hey, I'm going to grow my assets, I'm just going to start buying income, which the crazy thing is, when you buy income, you're rewarded with growth. When you invest for growth, sometimes you're rewarded with loss. But when you're buying income, you've got this value, this paycheck that's coming in that keeps you grounded when things get good and when things get bad. Because when things get good, we get distracted by things that are better. When things are bad, we get distracted by what we're losing. So there's always a distraction no matter what situation we're in. So we're like, let's look at this mentality of starting young versus what everybody else is doing. Like literally 99.99999 is every investor out here is doing this growth. Let's just grow and convert to income. So we took the QQQ. So the QQQ was started in 2000. Might have been the mid-year of 1999. And if you watch any television currently, you'll probably run into a QQQ commercial.
Yep.
They're everywhere. Since its inception, I think they've only had 2 down years. We'll see what happens this year.
Well, after its initial 3 years.
After the first 3 years was pretty rough. And then they've only had really two bad years since there. So of the past 25 plus years, they've had 5 bad years. The first 3 were really bad. And then they've only had 2 down years since 2003,
Yep.
which is phenomenal. And the QQQ is basically tech.
Yep.
Tech is running the
100
world.
largest NASDAQ companies.
Yeah. Huge companies, right? So we wanted to compete.
Stop right there. Because when you hear that,
Hear what?
when the people are hearing they've only had 3 bad years or 2 bad years, you're kind of perpetuating that thought, right?
Yes.
Hey, I got to get in there, right?
That's it.
That's where this comes from. This kind of
2 out of 20?
2 out of 20. I'll take that every day. I go to the casino, I win, all the time,
Yep.
So,
Well, and I don't disagree. And that's why we're picking it.
Yep.
Because let's battle the best growth investment out there that we can find and basically index,
Yep.
NASDAQ 100, against boring old income investments that have arguably the greatest investor of all time, Warren Buffett. Because Warren Buffett is a true and blue dividend guy. He is an income fiend. Like he doesn't buy a company, that isn't profitable. He buys a company that's profitable that he knows he can squeeze, way more profit out. And what he does, he doesn't ever sell. He buys
seldom.
quality and he sits. He's patient. So you've got the Warren Buffett mentality versus everybody else. Okay. And then what we did is we put together a really cool chart. I put this together going back to day one, which was 2000, year 2000, to present. And I didn't pick that day for any other reason than that was the first full year that I found of the QQQ performance. So its first full year was a disaster. And then, then it had all those, 2 out of 22 years it had lost, and 20 years were awesome gains, like huge gains. You can see gigantic numbers in there. Okay. And then what we did is we started at $100,000 in both sides. So we looked at the Warren Buffett mentality versus everybody else's mentality. And we wanted to say, okay, if we invest 100,000 in the QQQ and all of its greatest index in the last 25 years, and let's invest in that for 25 years or 24 years. We ended in 2024 versus, the Warren Buffett dividend mentality, on the left-hand side. What we wanted to do is say, okay, let's grow our assets. And then on the right far column, the second to last column, you said dividends purchased. We wanted to figure out at some point, if we were to sell the growth, let's just grow our money in the greatest growth vehicle we can find. And at some point, let's just say, hey, this is the year we're going to stick a pin in it and retire and be done. We're planting our flag. how much income would we be able to purchase? So this is a 25-year career. So this is somebody that's like, hey, I started in 2000. I'm going to invest all my money. I'm not going to have much money in 2000. The lion's share of my 401k savings is going to come after my first 3 years. So even though they're starting out not the greatest, savings takes the whole career, right?
Yep.
So we're going to invest some more money, but here we're just going to start $100,000 and let it go. So by year 2020 or 2024, you've got 632,000. You've got your $100,000 grew to 632,000, which isn't bad.
Not terrible.
I mean, when you look at it, I'm like, oh, that's pretty awesome.
Right.
So we turned $100,000, no other contributions, into 632,000 in the QQQ over a 24-year period, which would have generated about $33,000 of income a year for the rest of retirement, plus growth and stuff like that. So that's not bad. I don't know what the scenario would have been and how that would have looked for somebody's life. We're not getting into like planning, but you've got $600,000 with $33,000 of dividend income.
You're assuming that they convert over to growth.
Well, that's what everybody does.
Right.
You grow your assets and you convert when you're ready to retire. Don't talk to me about bonds while I'm young. Don't do that. I want to grow my money. Well, it's 600%. That's pretty good. As opposed on the left-hand side, you've got, let's just start when I'm young and I'm going to buy income now and let it accumulate more and more income up until the day I retire. Okay. And on this side, you start at $100,000. You end at 1.4 million. Remember what I said? If you buy quality, buy income, you're rewarded with growth. That's exactly what happened here, producing $183,000 of income, which is a little nutty.
I think you need to dig into that. The 183,000 comes for holding all those shares of that 1.4 million. So you don't have to sell a share, some principal, or anything to get that $183,000. On the other side, you're going to sell something to get that if you don't convert.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, assuming we're getting dividend income on the other side too. Let's just say we sold the QQQ when we bought dividend income.
Yeah.
So that 33, there's nothing to sell. We're all the same. On this side, you just bought it a long time ago and you're able to maintain that same portfolio. And then instead of reinvesting in year 2024, we're just going to pay it out
now
to
it's time to get your
You're going to
paycheck.
transfer from one to the other. I get that. Yep.
And then now down here, your portfolio is generating $183,000 of dividend income, not having to sell any principal.
Just for holding those shares that's accumulated, being patient all those years.
Correct.
Yeah, which is more than you even put in.
Which is crazy. I mean, you put $100,000 in,
almost double.
And it's $183,000 per year. And it's going to grow from there.
Right.
So not that this is the definitive research to say, well, you should never just solely focus on growth, but we are so distracted. When you look at the last couple of years in the market, I mean, the market's taken off, and they're like, well, I want 30% a year. Well, you've got how many years in there? I got glare on the screen. I can't really see. You have ton of years in there. You made 50%, 30%, 50%, 33%, 35%, 39, 48, 26, 54, almost 55% in 1 year.
Yep.
I mean, who doesn't want that? And yet comparing the QQQ against value crushed it. So when I first showed this to an advisor, actually, before I showed it to the advisor, I'm like, well, he's going to go, well, the first 3 years were horrible.
Of course it outperformed.
Yeah, of course it. Like, you set yourself up for success. And I was like, I didn't even pay attention. Like, that was the first full year. I didn't magically pick that year. So I was like, all right, then let's look in 2003. So here it's the same thing, but instead of investing that $100,000 in 2000, we said, let's just say you're the greatest market timer of all time. And you bought at the bottom. You put your 100 grand in and you missed all 3 of those years. Let's be honest. Nobody's going to do this. Okay. If we did this, we'd have a much bigger studio, right? We didn't. So we put that 100,000 in the QQQ at the bottom, and then there's only 2 years.
Only two negative
years out of 22 years. That is awesome. So we're putting boring dividend investments up against the best QQQ. Okay. So, you can see on the screen, there's these green boxes. The green boxes represent which side of the equation had higher values. Okay. So the first 2 years, the QQQ crushed it, had much higher values. Then Warren Buffett's boring dividend strategy over here started to take over. And by 2005, the value proposition had much more value up until 2016. Okay. Then the QQQ really took fire. And then basically what happened, what you're going to see there on out, is the QQQ actually took over. The dividend investing only ended at 1.2 million, roughly. Still, that 100,000, missing the first 3 years, grew to $1.2 million, just under $1.2 million, generating $154,000 of dividend income, which isn't that far off. It was 183 before.
But
now
we
it's
also
154.
cut out 3 years, right?
Cut 3 years out.
Yeah.
On the QQQ side, now they had way more value. And this is the argument. I'm going to have more income, I'm going to have more value, which will produce me more income, right? Well, let's see.
You have more value.
You have more value. That 2.3 only converted to $124,000 of income, which was $25,000 less, a little bit more, $30,000 less than if you would have bought income from the beginning. Now, this is where we need to dig in. How in the world can a portfolio with less value produce you more income? How can you do that? Because dividends pay out on how many shares you own.
That's right.
So on the left-hand side, you have companies that have been splitting their stock, companies that have been buying back their shares. Share price goes up, share price goes down. And the whole time we've been reinvesting and buying more shares. So on the left-hand side, we've accumulated such a huge share base. Even though the value might be a little depressed down here, the amount of shares that you own are producing $154,000 of income. On the right-hand side, and the QQQ side, we're like, hey, we have $2 million, $2.3 million. Mm-hmm. How many shares can we go buy at the value of which they are at that year? You're going to purchase $2.3 million worth of companies, and that's going to equate to so many shares, which are going to produce $124,000 of income, which is $30,000 less than the left side. So even in the best scenario where you can outproduce on the growth side, you still end up with less income.
Yeah, you still need almost $600,000 to get to the same level of income.
And here's where greed comes in. Here's where greed comes in. I've shown this to just a handful of people, and I've said, what side do you want? And almost without fail, everybody's like, well, that $2.3 million looks pretty good. Even though it produces less income.
Yep.
We are attracted to the more money, even though it produces less income, which is so crazy to me. Because over time, you're going to make so much more with the $154,000 of dividend income than you will on the 124.
At some point, and especially younger people, and I was like this for a while. You get your paycheck, and one day that paycheck's going to go away. But do you really fully grasp that concept? And when you're young, well, what are you going to do with all that money that you've mm-hmm. grown? And they're looking at that pile of money, like you said, they're looking at that 2.3 million. That's what I want. But do they even know that they need income?
The why?
But if they start thinking, well, I don't have my paycheck's not going to come in next month. Maybe they start to understand, well, what's the whole purpose of this? It's income. Yep. At some point, unless you're going to give your money away when you die, you're going to need income. Or you can do both in this case.
Yeah.
You're going to have your money and your income.
That's right.
I think the other point is, let's say you're on QQQ side and you wrote it like that. Are you really going to think income?
Right.
No, it's never going to go away, right? I'm only going to have 2 bad years out of the next 20.
Mm-hmm. I'll be fine.
I'll be fine.
Right.
Thinking that way.
Yes.
You may or you may not, because if we start over from the beginning, you may just end up on the other end. So when you ride that train here, it's hard to get off that train for people.
Well, look at the difference in 2021 and 2022. Yeah, with the one negative year later on in the QQQ. And if you look at the far right-hand column, you went from basically about the same amount of income being able to generate. Like you would just need 166,000.
Explain what that is.
So this number on the far right-hand column is the amount of additional assets that you would need to generate the same amount of income from the dividend portfolio. So in 21, you're almost neck and neck. You need $166,000 additional.
And if you were to retire that year, it'd be like, I won.
Yeah,
Almost.
I almost won.
Almost. I was second still, but I feel like I won.
But to go back to that timing point, it drops 32% the next year. And instead of being at 160,000, it's 1.1 million.
Needing. So you have to invest another 1.1 million to match the income on the side that you just started with dividend income.
And you lost $30,000 worth of potential income.
Because of one volatile year.
1 year. Which is just crazy.
So how do you know when the perfect timing is, right?
You don't.
Nobody does. And that's what I'm saying. They're on this train and they've rode this train for 20 years. It's hard to get off that train. So that this conversation has to happen for people to grasp it.
Yeah. And then I read a stat the other day that of the Coca-Cola that Warren Buffett owns in his Berkshire Hathaway fund is 800 and some billion. Or million. 800 and some $1 million.
A year.
Now he's owned Coca-Cola for a long period of time and he's reinvested those dividends and it's producing over $800 million in just that one position in his portfolio. I can't even wrap my head around that. Well, that's why this works so well. Like, who would want $800 million of growth? I don't know anybody who wouldn't want that. Yeah. He's like, yeah, that's what I made in income last year in one position.
Just for holding Coca-Cola.
And the crazy thing
paid him
if you look at all the stats around Warren Buffett's portfolio, very seldom will you ever see how much he's grown. It's all about the income he makes on the dividends he has. And nobody's going, oh, I want that. They're going, I'll never get that. Yes, you can.
You can if you start.
It might not be the same number. Well, let's be honest. It ain't going to be the same number, but you can have the exact same thing.
Because he's got billions of dollars.
Of other people's money, too.
Of other people's money.
Yeah, that's not all his money. But he's compiling everybody's, and that's what the dividends under one position. You start looking at it, it's billions and billions and billions of dollars a year of dividend income, which is on the left side. He's not saying, hey, don't talk to me about taking my multi-billion-dollar portfolio and turning it into more billions of dollars. He's like, hey, how much income can I grow? And we're going to utilize this cash flow to make even smarter investments on the other side. That's what has made Warren Buffett Warren Buffett. He buys income and he turns it into growth. Everybody else is like, well, I'm going to be better than Warren Buffett. I'm going to find the best investments out there. And then they're going, I'm never going to be able to retire. Well, that's because everybody lives on the right side of that chart. Yep. And we all want it. Like I want it.
I would love to open up my account and see 2.3.
Yeah, who doesn't want
that? But the reality around it is...
The warped mindset is that will never... Like, if you would have bought one share of Coca-Cola when it went public...
It was like 20... It was what, 40?
19,
it was $40?
$40 a share.
When it first went public.
1912 or something like that. I don't remember the exact year. Fact check me, whatever. But if you bought one share of Coca-Cola, that share... would have grown to...
It was like $21 million.
$21 million as of last year. Paying out 600...
Like 600 and something.
600 and something.
We have a whole show where we went into that.
600 and some $1,000 of dividend income just last year. $40.
Yep.
Turned into $600,000 of dividend income with a $21 million value. Warren Buffett's like, yeah, I know. Right. Yeah, I get it.
Right. Been doing it for about 30 years.
Yeah, I got 800 million reasons why that's a good idea.
Yep.
If you would have taken that same $40 and bought just the S&P 500, it would, that's what I haven't done yet.
Sure.
It would be a pittance. That thought process is what we developed in here. Figure out, can you outgrow? And if you did, what would it cost you to buy into the income? And this proves that timing matters. Like, you have so much more stress on the other side and you still can't get it to work.
Well, and this is starting your growth investment on the right side at the most opportune time in history in 2003.
Which is never going to happen.
So if you were going to do this now, And are you going to hit this kind of timing again? Like you just said earlier, the best market timer in the world started it in 2003, and still it doesn't have the same income.
It's close.
It's close, but it's still not there. And are you going to even be able to reproduce that?
And by the way, on the left side, we didn't even cherry pick what dividends would have outdone. We just used our portfolio.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we rank in the top, sometimes we don't. So we're not like picking the best dividend investor portfolio that we could find to match against the best growth. We just picked ours. Like, I'd like to say we're, the best out there, but we're not. And when we match our portfolio up against the best growth index out there, they can't compete with us, which, by the way, we get to say that. But the crazy thing is, there's probably dividend portfolios on the left side that make it shameful to even consider doing the dividend or the QQQ on the right side, which is crazy. All right, let's bring this to a close. Any last thoughts?
When you're looking at '08 there, and you're down on QQQ, you're down 41%, you're theoretically saying, I'm not going to get nervous and bail at that time.
Right.
Right? We're over here, if we're down, say the same 41%, we're loading. I know we're not, but I'm saying if you were, we're loading up on a bunch of cheap shares, just like Warren Buffett does.
Yep.
And it's all about as many shares as you can get by the time you're retired to convert that into income or take that as income. So
Love it. That's
and
great.
unless you pass away early, I haven't met a retiree yet that, retired before they died and didn't need income. Well, you're going to need income at some point.
My last thought would be very similar to what Kevin just said. The right-hand side assumes that you would never sell. It assumes that you also bought in at the bottom. It assumes that you're not emotional. It assumes that the Dalbar study is not real.
Mm-hmm.
The Dalbar study is very real, which basically says investors are emotional and make changes at the wrong time, which ruins their rate of return. So the right-hand side's never going to happen, ever. You might experience a few of those years, but the moment you come across the 30%, you're like, I'm out.
Well,
I made my money.
3 years out from retirement, 2 years out from retirement, and you take a 32% hit. You're not sitting around waiting for the 55 the next year.
No.
You're not getting the full thing.
And to your point, you get entrenched in this thought process on the right side. So when would you ever change that mindset and get out of it? You probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
And would your timing be right? Odds are no.
No.
everybody knows Warren Buffett. Name me 5 guys, other money managers that people can consistently go, but they don't follow the left-hand side. But everybody knows them. You can't name 3 people, other money managers on that side. And because, why? Because Warren Buffett works.
Yeah. And yet
Works.
very few people follow his lead. We do, but a lot of people don't. So this has been fun discussion.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed talking about this stuff. This wasn't to show our clout or anything like this. This is just a discussion that pops up a lot. And I'm like, hey, let's put some facts around reality. And does the growth mentality really work? And I think we've proved that it's a very big challenge, even in situations that aren't real. I mean, the returns are real, but people would never stick around that period of time or time it exactly that way. So hopefully this was fun, very educational for you. As always, subscribe to our show. We'd love when you do that. And if you have questions, you can always reach out.